love the mission of the earth. In order to understand our subject more thoroughly, let's direct our gaze first toward the great universe, and then toward the more limited sphere of our own immediate earthly existence. In this way we shall be able to accurately picture what spiritual or esoteric science understands as the three concepts of universe, earth, and the human being. You will have gathered from what has been said that according to spiritual science, we cannot think that the world consists only of matter. We have encountered various world entities. It is better not to speak of our Earth's various embodiments, old Saturn, old Sun, and old Moon, as world bodies. And we have heard how they are certainly not simply material substance. This applies also to what we describe as the contrast between the Earth as a planet and the Sun as a fixed star. Each world entity has been, as we have seen, the dwelling of a host of spiritual beings, created to meet their particular needs. The Sun separated from the Earth because it had to become the home of certain exalted beings who could use only the finer substances for their evolution, whereas human beings, on the other hand, had to retain the other substances on the Earth. If we were to investigate the whole wide universe, we would find nothing solely material. Everything is connected with spirit. We heard, too, how various earthly beings are related to spiritual beings. The Earth's stones and minerals have their I being in the surrounding universe. Plants have their I being in the center of the Earth, whereas their astral being, which brings about the formation of blossoms, hovers outside them. The fact that everything is pervaded by spirit widens and enriches our notions, or our image, of a cosmic body. We look up at a body in the heavens and become aware that it is simply the expression of spiritual beings, materially connected with it. Now, the development of certain dormant faculties within human beings enables them to gain knowledge of these heavenly bodies spread out in space. Today we shall consider humankind's connection with these bodies. On our Earth we are surrounded by minerals, plants, animals, and other human companions. We also know that earthly affairs are regulated by higher beings, who in Christian terminology are called angels, archangels, and archai. We also know that there are other beings concerned with the earth, although they send their forces from the sun or the moon. Today we can add to this. The question arises, to what extent may the essential being of one planet in our solar system be compared with another? To simplify matters, let us consider the beings we can see around us in our present cycle of human evolution, and ask, how are the beings that surround us here as minerals, plants, animals, and humans related to other beings in the universe? We are, of course, approaching this question in a spiritual, scientific way, from knowledge acquired through the development of clairvoyant consciousness, to which I shall return later. First, let us ask, does clairvoyant consciousness find, on other planets, human beings similar to those evolving on our Earth? Clairvoyant consciousness answers that we do not find human beings on other planets in exactly the same form as on Earth, but we do find strong confirmation that each planet, each heavenly body, has its own particular task and mission. Nothing is repeated in the universe. Every heavenly body has a different mission. Our Earth has arisen from three preceding embodiments. The human stage of existence we ourselves are now passing through has been passed through by other beings, for example by the angels on Old Moon, by the archangels or spirits of fire on Old Sun, and by the archai, spirits of personality, on Old Saturn. It is easy to make the mistake of thinking that these beings were human beings, like ourselves, in the preceding planetary embodiments. But it must be borne in mind that there was no solid rock or minerals on Old Moon, and that therefore the beings who went through their human stage there did so under entirely different conditions. The archangels, spirits of fire, for example, passed through their human stage in utterly different conditions, since old Sun consisted only of gas and air. Only beings who, unlike us, had no need for solid bodies, muscles, and so on, could pass through their human stage there. In earthly evolution, too, nothing is repeated, and every stage has its particular mission in the great household of cosmic existence. Let us now consider first the evolution of our earth. With spiritual vision, we see it as a body inhabited by human beings, where they are evolving. This evolving became possible only because the sun and the moon separated from the earth, resulting in humankind's forces being held in balance between sun and moon. When the earth was still sun, so to speak, it passed through a phase of evolution in union with the sun. The sun itself was thus still at the stage of planetary existence and was inhabited by the spirits of fire. But progressive development made it possible for the part of the sun that was incorporated in the earth to rise to a higher state of existence at the expense of the remainder, which separated off as the earth's moon. In the great universe, evolution proceeds in this way. Things that for a time have progressed side by side then separate, one rising into higher spheres, the other descending into a lower state. In order for certain higher beings to develop to a sufficiently lofty stage, the sun itself had to become a suitable arena for them. So it advanced from a planetary existence to that of a fixed star. We must therefore consider our sun to be a cosmic being that has evolved from a planet. Viewed in the light of esotericism, the sun is a planet that has risen to a higher state of existence. As was indicated in yesterday's lecture, after the sun had separated from Earth plus Moon, humankind continued to live for a period within this more restricted Earth existence, without the spiritual forces of the sun. Then, with the coming of Christ, the spiritual sun force took root upon our earth. As the consequence of Christ's embodiment with the earth, human beings will become ever more mature by receiving the Christ impulse into themselves, and the material form taken on by a planet is dependent on the kind of beings it develops. Just as the sun became what it is by withdrawing the finest substances because its beings needed them, so too will the earth. The substances of the earth will by then have been transformed so as to be suited to the being that humans will have become in the distant future, together with the other earth beings they bear along with them. For when human beings become truly strong, they will draw the other beings after them. What will happen then? If humans imbue themselves more fully with the Christ principle, if they absorb more and more of the exalted sun forces that descended with Christ to the earth, they will themselves become more Christ-like, and will irradiate the whole earth with the Christ principle. What is this Christ principle? We need to be very clear about this, and for this we must know what the mission of our earth is, so that we can describe the latter by one specific word. What is the mission of our earthly existence? What, for example, was the mission of Old Moon, which preceded Earth? If we look back at Old Moon clairvoyantly, we find at the beginning of its existence something very remarkable in the forerunners of the beings on our earth. They had many qualities, but at the beginning of the Old Moon embodiment, they lacked one in particular that we now find all around us in our earth existence. The forces of Old Moon, the precursor of our earth, worked together without wisdom. At the beginning of this period, things were still such that no sign of harmonious cooperation born of wisdom could have been observed. But if we follow the evolution of Old Moon clairvoyantly, we see how wisdom, drawn from the cosmos, was instilled in the beings dwelling there by other beings active in Old Moon's surroundings. Old Moon is therefore called the planet of wisdom. When the Old Moon period ended, wisdom was in all things. The old moon embodiment then passed through an intermediate condition resembling a world sleep, known as pralaya, emerging again as earth existence. And when the beings emerged from this condition, they brought with them the wisdom that had been instilled in them on old moon. The consequence of this is that wisdom is implanted in all earthly beings, in all the beings around us that stem from the old moon embodiment and have yet a further mission. Wisdom is evident. Look where you will. Take, for example, the blossom of any plant. The more closely you look at it, the more wonderful it appears, for the arrangement of the several parts is the result of higher wisdom. Take the human thigh bone. See how the highest wisdom has ordered the constituent parts to form a support capable of carrying the upper part of the body. No modern engineering skill in bridge construction can match the sublime wisdom manifest in that bone structure. In all the other human organs, and indeed in all that surrounds us, we see wisdom at the root of all things. One could say, in a stumbling kind of way, that earthly humankind should at first absorb this wisdom into its inner self. Microcosmic wisdom can be learned only from the objects that surround humans here. Yet wisdom is inherent in all things, even in the parts of the human constitution where we do not function consciously. In speaking of historical development, we often extol human wisdom. How wonderful it seems when we learn at school that at a particular time humankind made this or that invention or discovery. Many of us have been taught, for example, that in recent times humans discovered the art of paper-making with their human intelligence. But wasps could do this long before humans. It is true, of course, that it is not the individual wasp, but the group soul of the wasps that constructs the nest from the same material as our paper. These group souls possessed long ago what human beings will gain only gradually. The wisdom that is deeply ingrained in all beings on earth had to be implanted gradually. We shall see how this came about during the old moon existence, how at that time wisdom battled against non-wisdom, and how old moon then bequeathed to the earth rudimentary beings in whom wisdom had been implanted. What is to be similarly implanted into the beings of our earth? Just as wisdom was implanted during the old moon embodiment, love is to be implanted on our planet. Our planet is the planet of love. The initial development, the first infusing with love, began in its lowest form. This happened during the Lemurian epoch, when the human eye took shape. At that time, the development of love in its lowest form began with the separation of the sexes, and all further development consists in continual refinement of this love principle to the point of spiritualization. Just as wisdom was instilled in all beings during the old moon embodiment, so one day when our earth has attained its goal, all earthly beings will be filled with love. Let us now think for a moment of the planetary existence that will follow our earth, that of Jupiter. When the beings who will inhabit Jupiter reappear, they will perceive with their own spiritual faculties the beings surrounding them. And just as we, with our intellect, admire the wisdom inherent in stones, plants, and animals, indeed in everything around us, just as we draw wisdom from them for our own benefit, so will the Jupiter beings direct their forces to the beings in their environment, and have the love that was implanted in those beings during Earth evolution wafted back to them. Just as we analyze objects and are edified by their inherent wisdom, the Jupiter beings will be edified by the outpourings of love from the beings around them. This love, which is to develop on earth, can develop only through earthly I beings, interrelated in the way described. Only through severance from the group soul could this development begin, with one being facing another being. Only in this way could true love develop. No true love is possible where the I beings are interconnected within the group soul. Beings must be distinct from each other and offer love as a free gift. Only through a separation like the one that has come about in the human kingdom, where I meets I as independent individuals, has love as a free offering become possible. This is why increasing individualization and the union of distinct individuals had to come about on the earth. Let us think about beings belonging to a group soul. Their actions are directed by the group soul. Can it be said that the heart loves the stomach? No, the heart is united to the stomach by the inner being that holds them together. In the same way, the animal species are united with each other within a group soul, and their activities are regulated by the wisdom of the group soul. Only when this group nature is surmounted and an individual I faces another individual I, can the sympathy present as love be offered as a free gift from one being to another. Human beings had to be prepared gradually for this mission, and we see that before becoming fully individualized, they went through a kind of preliminary training for this love. We see how before they possessed an I completely, they were gathered into blood-related groups by the beings that guided them. Members of these groups loved one another because of the blood tie. This was the great era of preparation for humanity. It has already been pointed out that at this stage, love was not yet a gift to be made freely, but was directed by a remnant of cosmic wisdom. We have heard how Luciferic beings were active here, opposing with a strong liberating force everything that gathered humanity together in tribes and peoples through the power of the blood. All the forces striving to make humans independent operated through the Luciferic spirits. Thus human beings continued to mature, so that in the fullness of time they might receive love in its highest potency in the Christ principle, whose essence is expressed in the words, quote, "He who loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me, and he who loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me, and he who does not take up his cross and follow me is not worthy of me," unquote, Matthew 10:37 and 38. These words are not to be understood in any trite way. Their meaning is that through the Christ principle, the old blood relationship was to assume new forms of belonging together that would pass from soul to soul, from individual to individual, irrespective of a material basis. The Christ principle has given the impulse for one person to love another. Thus, through being Christianized, human love will become increasingly spiritual. Love will become more of the nature of soul and then spirit. And through this, human beings will draw along with them the lower beings of the earth and will transform the whole earth. In a remote future, they will transform the entire substance of the earth, making the earth's body mature again for reuniting with the sun. Christ, the spiritual Son, has given the impulse toward the reuniting of the sun and the earth in one body at some future time. We have seen in surveying the course of world evolution how the sun first separated physically from the earth, and how the mighty impulse of the Christ principle was then sent down to earth to provide the impetus for a reuniting of earth and sun, so that they might ascend to higher stages of existence. We have also realized that our earth can harbor only those human beings who have this as their mission. Therefore, when we survey the human kingdom, desiring to learn about earthly humankind, we can find it only on the earth. For it was here that appropriate conditions were created for such human beings as now exist here. But what of the other kingdoms? Let us consider first that of the plants. Clairvoyant vision, observing our world and examining the other planets belonging to our solar system, finds on all of them a plant kingdom like ours. So in our plant kingdom we have something that exists throughout our solar system. Thus we find that our solar system is populated by plant beings. And if we looked at the matter with esoteric knowledge, we would see that each planet is populated with its own kind of human beings. It is easy to perceive a close relationship between plants and the sun, and also how plant existence is intimately connected with that of the sun. But if this is so, The same must hold true for all the plants in our solar system. Looking back to the time when the Earth was still the sun planet, the old sun embodiment, we know that at that time human beings consisted of a physical body and an etheric body. They were at the plant stage of existence, at the level of the plant kingdom surrounding us today, which is composed of beings consisting of a physical body and an etheric body. In our encounters with these beings, we can say that they have remained true to the sun. Even today they manifest quite clearly their connection with the sun. Let us consider such a plant being according to Rosicrucian wisdom. We see how the plant is fixed in the ground by its root, the organ that points it toward the center of the earth, to its eye, capital I, while its reproductive organs are turned toward the sun, absorbing its pure rays. Now let us think of the human being. It is not difficult to picture the human being as a reversed plant. If we think of a plant exactly reversed in position, we have the human being. Its reproductive organs are directed toward the Earth's center, and its roots toward cosmic space. The animal stands halfway between these positions. Hence it can be said in a spiritual sense that when the soul element of the universe passed through the various kingdoms, it went through plant, animal, and human existence. Plato expressed this in a wonderful way, quote, "The world soul is crucified on the cross of the world body," unquote. Plato Timaeus, chapter 8. End of footnote. During its plant stage of evolution, the human being was turned toward the center of the earth. The corresponding direction for the animal is that of its spine, horizontal. The human being's position is that of the plant, in reverse. This is the origin of the cross. The world soul is crucified. This is the meaning of the cross. The plant of today is a being that strives towards the sun, that has remained to a certain extent united with the sun. Hence its orientation is the reverse of the human being's. Animal forms in the various planetary existences are sometimes similar and sometimes different. In this respect, too, the animal stands halfway between the human being and the plant. Turning now to the mineral kingdom, we find that there is something in the forms of crystals that takes us into cosmic space beyond our solar system's borders. When we consider translucent mineral formations in particular, we gain an inkling of what goes on in the universe far beyond the boundaries of our solar system. The mineral, something extremely abstract, something with no definite existence, and yet the very foundation of our life, has a cosmic existence. The more exalted the beings, the more they are suited to our Earth's solar system. We will now consider the same question in relation to the human being. If human beings were adapted only to the forces prevailing on Earth, they would be condemned to exist there and there alone. They could never make themselves into citizens of the universe. They could never speak of anything that transcended the earthly. Although they are adapted in their external form to the conditions pertaining on earth, they have, through their higher powers, a part in the higher beings linked with the earth. What restricts human beings to the earth relates only to their body. The spiritual powers with which they are endowed lead them far beyond the earth. Here again we must distinguish between widely differing forces. Let us deal first with those that can be easily distinguished. First, there is the power that in spiritual vision we saw arise in pre-Atlantean times. Human consciousness, to begin with, was a picture consciousness, and it was not until later on in earthly evolution that humans became able to grasp external objects with objective consciousness. This consciousness, which today presents the world of the senses to us so that we can see colors, hear sounds, smell, and taste, became differentiated from the general awareness of warmth perceived by the organ that was a kind of lantern, the pineal gland. Objective consciousness is entirely of the earth. Such sensory perception may be found only on the earth. Strange as it may seem, all our sense perceptions, such as those of color, sound, and so forth, have only earthly existence. and were we to encounter the beings of other planets, we would find ourselves at a loss to make ourselves intelligible to them. For instance, if we were to say something to those beings about the color red, they would not know what was meant. On their planet, they have a different way of perceiving objects and beings. What we call sensory perception is of service only on our particular planet. We have already heard that before sense perception became a specific faculty, it was inwardly connected with fertilization. Just as our sense perception is of the earth, so too the process of human fertilization as it exists today belongs exclusively to the earth and is adapted only to this planetary embodiment. It exists in order to provide a basis for the mission of the earth, namely love. For it is on the earth that love is to develop. Here we have an external human faculty that pertains to the earth alone. We come now to another power or faculty. Suppose you are looking at some object. As long as your eyes are directed to the object, you know that you are connected with it in some way. It has an effect on you. Now turn away and keep its picture in your memory. The object is gone, but its picture stays with you. If humans could not retain such pictures, they would be an entirely different being. For as soon as they looked away from an object, the mental picture of it would also disappear. Consequently, they would not be able to combine the characteristics of the observed object. The capacity of consciousness that enables humans today to retain the picture of an object that is elsewhere was already theirs on Old Moon. It is the same faculty that then enabled them to see what was around them in pictures. They could not at that time perceive external objects as they do today, but if they approached some object, an astral vision arose before them like a vivid dream picture, which nevertheless stood in a definite relationship to the object. Human beings then possessed a pictorial and not an objective consciousness. Nowadays we are in touch with the object. Our picture of it envelops the object. A last remnant of picture consciousness remains in our power to form memory pictures. These are, moreover, of greater value than the mere observation of external objects. If you observe a number of similar objects, you group them under a general concept. For example, here are many pieces of chalk, which you group under the general concept chalk. In this way we evolve general concepts for which no external objects exist. We can work inwardly with our mental pictures, and if with this inner activity, this capacity for ideation, we were to come into contact with beings outside our own planetary existence, we would be able to make ourselves more easily understood. The picture consciousness, which was really a dim clairvoyance that human beings had before they could perceive external objects, as well as the imaginative consciousness that they will develop later on, are both more comprehensive than mere sensory perception. When, through spiritual development, one has acquired picture consciousness and is able to perceive not only external objects but also a human aura, for example, when one sees in pictures the world of soul and spirit, and what exists in the world rises in pictorial symbols, then with this imaginative consciousness one has acquired the ability to establish contact with other beings inhabiting the planetary universe. There is still a higher degree of consciousness. Human beings had it in a dim form during the old sun period, and still have it in a dim form in dreamless sleep. Humans are not entirely without consciousness when asleep. Neither is a plant devoid of consciousness. Its day consciousness is the same as that of humans in sleep. Sleep is simply a lower stage of consciousness. Things escape our attention and we cannot observe them. By developing certain faculties, human beings can acquire the power to perceive what is around them during the dreamless sleep state. This is a higher state of consciousness than that of picture consciousness. It is the consciousness possessed by plants, but in a dormant state. If individuals rise to this state of consciousness and pervade it with their eye in full daylight consciousness, They have attained in esoteric development the stage of inspiration, of inspired consciousness. This inspired consciousness does not work only in the form of pictures. When something flows from the object to the observer, it is a tone consciousness and cannot be compared to picture consciousness. Those who experience it enter a spiritual world of tones. This is the consciousness described by Pythagoras as the harmony of the spheres. The whole universe then resounds. When human beings fall asleep, and the astral body and the I, capital, withdraw from the physical and etheric bodies, the harmonies and themes of cosmic music pervade the astral body. The astral body is then embedded in its true spiritual form of existence, and acquires from the music of the spheres the ability to restore its run-down forces. Humans plunge at night into the music of the spheres, and because of the tones that resound through them, they awake in the morning newly refreshed and strengthened. And when they can make this conscious, they have attained inspiration and are capable of perceiving everything contained within their solar system. Through the normal process of thought, we perceive only the things of the earth, but one is able, through imagination, to come into contact with the beings of the various planets, and one who has attained inspiration comes into a relationship with the solar system. This has always been known in certain circles. Goethe, who was an unconscious initiate, knew it. Hence, in the prologue to Faust, in a scene set in the spiritual world, heaven, he has the angels proclaim, "The sun intones his ancient song, mid rival chant of brother spheres." This reveals that Goethe knew that the secrets of a solar system are expressed in tones, and that whoever can achieve inspiration becomes acquainted with these secrets. That he did not write these lines by chance is shown in Part 2, where Faust is taken up into the spiritual world and the theme is repeated. Sounding loud to spirit ears, lo, the newborn day appears. Spirit ears are those of a clairvoyant able to perceive the sphere harmonies of a solar system. And if you could observe the sun forces as they stream down onto the bodies of plants as they grow out of the earth, these plants with their roots and leaves ending above with blossoms enveloped by astrality, into which the spiritual sun forces pour, if you could perceive with a spiritual eye, EYE, these forces that enter mysteriously through the blossom, you would hear them as the spiritual music of the spheres, audible, it is true, only to spirit ears. Spiritual tones penetrate mysteriously into the flowers of plants. This is the secret of plant growth. Each individual blossom is an expression of tones that give it its form and the fruit its character. The sun's tones are caught up by the plant and reign within it as spirit. You know, perhaps, how form can be treated in the material world through sound. Think only of Chladni's sound figures, how powder scattered over a plate takes on certain patterns or figures when subjected to sound. Footnote, Ernst Chladni, 1756 to 1827, German physicist known for studies of acoustics. He studied the vibration of strings and rods and, through the use of sand, the vibration of plates. End of footnote. These figures are the expression of the sound that caused them. Just as physical sound is caught in this powder, the spiritual sound of the sun is captured and drawn in by flower and fruit. It is hidden mysteriously within the seed, and when the new plant springs from the seed, it is this trapped and absorbed sound that conjures forth the form of the plant. Clairvoyant consciousness surveys our surrounding world of plants, and in the flowers that carpet our earth's surface, it sees everywhere the reflex of the sun tones. What Goethe says is true, the sun intones his ancient song. But it is also true that these sun tones stream down, are absorbed by the plants, and reappear when the new plant springs from the seed. For the sun tones resound in the forms of the plants, re-echoing into space the music of the spheres. There is a still higher state of consciousness, which we call intuition, in the true sense of the word. By means of this, human beings can penetrate into the very nature of things. This is beyond inspiration. With intuition, people enter other beings directly and identify their very self with them. This leads them still further. Where can this inspirational, intuitive consciousness lead? It can lead people to feel they are one with their planet Earth, for the I beings of the plants are at the center of the Earth. If people hear the sound of the sun, they become one with the planetary being embodied in the center of the Earth. They become one with their planet. But they can become one with every single being that exists. They then have experiences that reach beyond our solar system. Their view widens from system consciousness to cosmic consciousness. Intuition transcends particular solar systems. Thus we see that in the mineral kingdom there is something that in its unified form furnishes a basis extending far beyond our ordinary existence. We see that the present human form is a physical, earthly form, but that human beings will raise themselves once more from ordinary earthly consciousness to planetary consciousness through imagination, to system consciousness through inspiration, and to cosmic consciousness through intuition. This is humanity's path, for this path is bound up with the whole evolution of our universe.